satellite interview with Jacqui who is an early childhood special educator. She will be discussing the characteristics and effects of language and communication development in children with autism, as well as one intervention that early on educators can use within their classrooms to assist in the communication and language development of children with autism. So before we go into too much detail, let's welcome Jacqueline Wilson to our program. Hi, Jacqueline. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Now, it is said that autism is ranked the third highest diagnosed disability in the United States today. Could you explain a little more about what is autism for our early on educator viewers?
Autism is a disability that varies from mild to severe that impairs children's socialization and communication skills, as well as presents ritualistic behaviors. Autism is on a spectrum called autism spectrum disorders, otherwise known as ASD. Therefore, there are additional varying characteristics that individualize every student identified with ASD. Hence, no two students with ASD are alike. There is no known cause of ASD, and it is routinely identified around 3 years of age. Not only do children with autism use either verbal or nonverbal cues to communicate, but they also might only be able to communicate verbally or non-verbally as well, thus impacting their receptive and expressive communication skills in varying ways. Students with autism have more difficulty with language and communication because they take information in parts, they think more concretely, and they generalize into information. Therefore, the application of language is routine and often misunderstood.
Now that we know a little more about the characteristics of autism, I have read that children with autism can be identified as either verbal or nonverbal. What is the difference between children with ASD who are verbal in comparison to children with ASD who are nonverbal? Nonverbal and verbal children with ASD use language, however, in different forms. Nonverbal children with autism tend to use more gestural cues and visual spatial techniques to communicate, while verbal children with autism tend to use more language, however, have more difficulty with the use of it, or otherwise known as the pragmatics of language. Now that we understand that children with autism can either be verbal or nonverbal, can you explain a little more about the language and communication characteristics seen in autism and how they impact students? Now, let's begin with the concept of joint attention. Joint attention is an early indicator of the diagnosis of autism, which is found in both verbal and nonverbal children with ASD. Now, this occurs when students have the ability to learn language and how to communicate through interacting oneself with another individual, whether it be a child or an adult, and an object, as well as the ability to express life experiences. Now, children with ASD have difficulty with joint attention due to the impairments in nonverbal interaction, imitation skills, as well as using language learned in appropriate context. Now, children with ASD have difficulty with nonverbal interactions, such as eye gaze, social turn-taking, as well as facial and other gestural prompts. Students with autism also have difficulty with imitation, which in return limits their language and communication development. Imitation occurs when a child learns early on how to copy and implement the components of communication. The ability for a child to imitate an action provided by an adult teaches a child how to socially take turns and appropriately use objects. For example, a child pretending to cook dinner or learning how to wave goodbye. Due to the children with ASD's tendency of linking to only one piece of information, numerous pieces are often lost. Therefore, early on educators must provide multiple opportunities of the same educational path to reiterate the importance of the steps. Now, how does having difficulty with joint attention impact the livelihood of children with autism? Having difficulty with joint attention affects the lives of students with autism because it limits their understanding and interpretation of communication. Children with ASD are sometimes unsure of how to appropriately mimic verbal and nonverbal communication skills. Since communication is so complex, the inability of learning, initiating, or copying social skills impacts their social learning interactions with peers. I never understood the impact joint attention and imitation have on children with autism and their communication. In addition to joint attention, another communication characteristic that is often found in children with autism is play development. Could you explain what this is for our early on educators? To begin with, through play development, verbal and nonverbal children with ASD are more likely to use proper functions of verbal and nonverbal communication. So early on educators must take note of these three types of play: solitary, social, and social-emotional play. Solitary play occurs when a child prefers to play independently of peers or adults. Social play occurs when a child prefers to play alongside or with one other child. Social emotional play occurs when a child prefers to emotionally interact with one or more other children and create roles of interaction. For example, one child pretends to be a doctor while two or three children play the patient. Early educators must understand that children with ASD are more likely to play independently as peers and adults because they prefer routine, structure, and ritualistic play environments. Through creating such a routine environment, they comfort themselves from outside stimuli, such as loud noises or unwanted touching. How does difficulty with play development impact the livelihood of children with autism? Due to the children's preference of structured ritualistic play, they lack the interpretation and understanding of communication and language skills of others such as emotional expressions or messages, which in return affects their social relationships. Therefore, this impacts the practice of their language and communication skills within their natural environment. The lack of learning how to appropriately communicate and use language during social early on play impacts their social independence. Early educators, however, can assist in the language and communication development of children with ASD by creating opportunities of play that are structured and include one peer. As a child progresses in play and communication development, increases in the number of peers and the variance of structured activities. Earlier educators could also initiate conversations through concrete cues. For example, saying "Good morning, Johnny," and teaching him to say "Good morning, Miss Wilson" back. Or by providing concrete emotional cues, such as saying "I am sad" and expressing a sad facial gesture. This also teaches students with autism the ability to learn what the other individual might be thinking by referring to their facial cues. Therefore, as an early childhood educator, you are teaching a concrete skill known as theory of mind that children with ASD often lack early on. Play development truly has a major impact on the communication and language development for children with ASD. Now that you have explained the characteristics of brain attention and play development, could you clarify how the complexities of conversation also affect children with autism? Verbal and nonverbal children with ASD have difficulty with the functions of communication that they have during conversation opportunities. For example, it is difficult for children with ASD to express their needs and their requests, along with the components of conversations one must have when communicating. Children with autism often think concretely, so conversations and interactions are often of their choosing or tangible in nature. Since children with ASD are also very ritualistic with their thoughts, conversations that they have are often routine or repetitive. Every time they might see a specific person, they propose the same conversation. Children with ASD also have difficulty requesting for objects early on, so they use a visual gaze or gesture to request an object. Varying preschool children with ASD will at times verbally request an object or a toy, however, will not respond to a thank you or a goodbye. How does the complexity of conversations impact children with autism's ability to communicate with others? Overall, the inability to be flexible during conversations and understand all the components of communication impacts students' ability to withhold friendships or partnerships. Thus, it puts a halt on the social support children require from friends and peers. And they often also referred to as a socially awkward child. So early educators could provide opportunities of practicing conversations and discussing topics of their interest. However, by introducing new topics from their topic of interest, the children are learning in a more meaningful and motivating manner. I never realized how multifaceted communication and language development is for all children early on. Another characteristic of language and communication development is echolalia. Could you describe what this might look like in children with autism? Jacqui, that's a great question. Early on educators must also be aware that verbal children with autism may also demonstrate the characteristics of echolalia when communicating. About 85% of verbal children with ASD demonstrate some form of echolalia, and it is displayed around 2 years of age. Echolalia occurs during conversations when children with ASD repeat questions and statements that they hear rather than expressing their own needs or wants. It can occur immediately following the statement heard, which is referred to as immediate echolalia, or a repetition of the statement could occur at a later time, referred to as delayed echolalia. Children with ASD use this type of communication when they do not understand how to use the correct language to express themselves. For example, when a child with autism is asked what he or she did in music that day, the child might in return say, "All students take your seats." The child is referring to what the music teacher had said and not the question at hand. Therefore, it's delayed echolalia. Or the child could have immediately repeated the question asked, "Where did you do music today?" referred to as immediate echolalia. Echoemia is most likely to occur if children with ASD are placed in situations or interactions that are unstructured or difficult for them. This causes them much anxiety, thus they are more likely to be afraid to communicate. Children with autism often use echoemia to help them through sequential steps if they are feeling anxious or may be used completely out of context. Now, Jacqueline, how does echoemia impact the livelihood of children with autism? Well, Jacqui, echoemia impacts children with ASD's life by not allowing them to link learned experiences and conversations to various situational opportunities. It also does not allow them to express their wants and needs. Early on, educators can work with children demonstrating echoemia through understanding the child's interests through the child and parents, avoiding questions of verbal instruction, as well as following students' lead during play. Working with children with ASD is a team effort, so educators should not be afraid to ask others for assistance if they are unsure of how to work with a child with autism. Now, due to varying communication and language difficulties for children with ASD, how does this affect their overall behavior within a natural environment? By natural environment, I mean their home, school, and community setting. Well, children with autism have challenging behaviors, often due to the lack of communication skills needed to indicate what they want or need. Other times, it can be due to additional health or neurological issues. Children with ASD often exhibit behaviors of aggression towards self or others, along with tantrums if they are given uncomfortable demands, unstructured routines, or are not able to express what they want. This can be very traumatic for the children as well as their families. Now, we as educators need to look at replacing the challenging behaviors with appropriate ones through gathering a better understanding of the child, his or her family, as well as his or her natural environment. Overall, behavior challenges impact the child's future and independence, making friends and involvement with their community. We as educators need to provide ample opportunities to increase language for both our children with and without verbal skills. Jacqueline, thanks for clarifying the varying language and communication characteristics and implications they have on children with autism spectrum disorder. Could you now enlighten early-on educators to intervention techniques they can use to assist in the development of communication for their students with ASD? Well, to begin with, there are various intervention approaches that impact children with autism in different ways. Some interventions focus on replacing challenging behaviors, while others focus on language and communication development. There's also no one intervention strategy that works for all children. Therefore, early-on educators must be able to provide varying intervention approaches with the help from their team and child family members. Well, Jacqueline, with the various interventions, what intervention do you think would work for language and communication development for children with autism? One intervention approach that is beneficial with a variety of verbal and nonverbal students with ASD is known as DIR. DIR stands for the Developmental Individual Difference Relationship-Based Model Program. The goal of this model program is to initiate verbal and nonverbal communication and a child's sense of social interaction through a child-initiated play, otherwise known as floor time. Through the use of floor time, the child with ASD will then develop expressive and receptive language abilities that they might not have learned otherwise. What is so impressive about this intervention for early-on educators is that it is geared for early-on communication and cognitive growth through developmental appropriate social interactions and emotional regulation. The DIR intervention model emphasizes 3 developmental areas that children with ASD experience when learning how to communicate and develop age-appropriate social skills. The 3 areas are functional development, motor and sensory development, and relationship development. In addition to these developmental areas implementation within the DIR model, children with ASD must also have extensive therapy support. Speech therapies must be provided 3 to 5 times per week, and occupational therapy must be provided 2 to 5 times per week. Now, depending on the educational environmental setting, these services might be provided within or outside of the classroom. It is documented that early-on inclusion programs are the most successful educational environments for students with autism. Even though this model for intervention seems very complex, what is so impressive is that it brings all of these components of the educational setting and makes it into a comprehensive model that assists in the generalization of information to the child. Thus, teaching the children with ASD early on how to implement communication skills across settings. Now that we know more about the basic goal of the DIR model, could you provide more information into the 3 developmental areas of DIR and how early-on educators can implement this intervention model within their classroom? Well, let's begin with the functional developmental area. This area focuses on the overall 7-stage process children with ASD go through when developing communication and social skills during play. They range from sheer attention to generalizing of ideas. The DIR intervention model focuses on the progression of these goals of communication through social turn-taking and interactions during social play. The second area of development for children with ASD is the motor and sensory area. This occurs when the child interacts within his or her environment during social play. How the environment is set up, the loud noises, and sense of touch determines the social and communication growth of comfort for children with autism. Early on educators can provide this type of an environment of growth for children with ASD through displaying visual pictures of toys and where they go, to creating structure through breaking up the room into specific interest areas so every center has a definite boundary. Children with ASD prefer structured environments, so before positive communication can occur, comfort must first take place. The third area of DIR intervention model is for early on educators to develop a relationship with the child with ASD. More often, children with autism are thrown into social interactions without a sense of who, what, where, why, and without a sense of themselves. Through communicating through verbal and nonverbal gestures, early on educators will learn what supports and therapies might be important for their student with autism. Now, therefore, how can early on educators use the model of DIR within their classroom setting to assist their students with autism? Well, the combination of social interaction, structured environment, and development of relationships often be fundamentally combined with the use of a floor time intervention approach. Floor time is an intervention approach used within the DIR model because it incorporates all the skills outlined by DIR that need to be learned in a comprehensive, age-appropriate manner. This approach is often used in the home of a child with ASD. However, it has the same components of the skills that need to be taught within an early childhood education setting. Floor time occurs when early on educators create a structured environment for the children with ASD to play in that is age-appropriate. When the child has begun play, the early on educator must then get down to the level of the child and begin initiation of communication. It could be as simple as taking a similar car that the child is playing with and mimicking the same movement so he or she can watch what you play. For example, spinning the wheels in a car in the same direction as the child and identifying the car by saying car or car's wheels. Once the child begins to mimic you, switch up the movement. For instance, begin to spin the wheels in the opposite direction of the child and say car, car wheels, or car wheels turn. Once the child begins to copy you, you are now teaching the child the beginning steps of how to take turns during communication. You are teaching the opening and closing of communication, otherwise known as turn-taking through social play. Now, if you have a higher functioning child with autism, you could again get down to their level and initiate play that is developmentally appropriate for them. It could range from following steps and making a dinner and pretend play to creating a spaceship in the black area. Through using child-initiated play outlined in DIR, you early on educators are comprehensively working on children with autism's communication development, helping them build relationships and building a sense of self. Not every child is going to begin at the same stage, so through interacting using floor time, early on educators are providing skills that they have already been trained in and applying it at the level of their students. Early on educators must be careful with the communication barrier because you do not want to be too intensive. However, you must also push the child little by little or he or she may never grow. Overall, the DIR model with the use of floor time intervention approach is simple to add to any early childhood classroom environment and is a great guideline of developmental skills to follow. All it takes is time, patience, and love for your students. Thanks, Jacqui, for taking the time today to explain the language and communication characteristics that often hinder children with autism. Thanks, Jacqui, for having me, and I just want to reiterate that early childhood educators set the stage for success early on for students with autism, so keep providing conversational opportunities for our students with ASD. Thank you. If you have any further questions or concerns, feel free to contact us on our website. We will see all of you tomorrow evening when we discuss the various ways and options for our children with autism. That wraps it up here at ASD TV. Have a great